The wind moves softly through the darkened branches, leaves tremble, shadows drift across bark, and somewhere beyond the reach of moonlight, the forest begins to breathe. Tonight, as sleep begins to take hold, we journey into the foggy space between folklore and fear. If you're listening beneath drifting clouds or wrapped in the quiet of your room, feel free to share your setting in the comments. These stories take on new life when we hear where they're being dreamt. This is the tale of Der Erlkönig. Der Erlkönig, meaning the Alder King, is a phantom sovereign of the forests, a presence whispered of wherever ancient trees grow thick and the night lingers long. Settle in, breathe deep, and let your thoughts drift into the unknown. Welcome to Fairytales After Dark. In the deep forests of Central Europe, where alder and oak rise shoulder to shoulder, the air carries a different stillness. Here, the ground remains cool even beneath summer sun. Moss softens every footstep, and mist clings gently to bark and leaf alike. Sound travels strangely in these woods. A distant crack of twig may echo for minutes, while a close breath may vanish without trace. It is in these spaces, neither silent nor loud, neither light nor dark, that the legend of Der Erlkönig took root. Long before villages carved their boundaries into the land, before roads stitched together valleys and hills, the forest ruled uninterrupted. Trees formed living corridors, canopies wove ceilings of green and shadow, roots threaded deeply through dark soil, connecting one life to another in unseen networks. To walk alone beneath such branches was to step into something older than memory. And so, stories emerged, not to frighten, but to explain. Der Erlkönig was said to walk these forests unseen, his presence revealed only through subtle changes. A sudden hush among birds, a chill passing through warm air, a shifting of shadows where no wind stirred. He did not announce himself, he did not demand attention. He simply appeared, like thought, drifting into awareness. In early tellings, Der Erlkönig was not a monster, he was a ruler, a silent king presiding over the invisible kingdom of roots and leaves, a sovereign of mist and moonlight, his domain stretching wherever alder trees leaned over dark water and forest paths narrowed into uncertainty. Those who sensed his presence described neither fear nor comfort. They described knowing, a certainty that they were no longer alone. The alder tree itself holds ancient significance. It grows near rivers, along marsh edges, in damp soils where earth meets flowing water. Its roots drink from unseen currents, its branches lean outward, as if listening, across cultures. Alders were believed to bridge worlds, between land and water, between life and decay, between the living and the unseen. It is no coincidence that Der Erlkönig bears their name. In German folklore, the forest is not merely landscape, it is a living realm, a place where spirits linger, where memory collects, where time slows. Fair folk wander its clearings, ghosts move among its shadows, and ancient kings walk beneath its canopy. Der Erlkönig stands at the heart of this belief, not as conqueror, but as caretaker. Yet there is another side to his legend, one darker, one that slips quietly between the trees. The most famous telling comes from a poem, written in 1782 by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. In it, a father rides through a storm-dark forest, his young son clutched tightly against his chest. The child hears whispers in the wind, sees figures moving among the branches, feels an unseen presence calling softly to him. But the father hears only the wind, sees only fog, and dismisses the child's fear as imagination. The voice that calls is Der Erlkönig, gentle, persuasive, almost kind. He offers comfort, he offers play, he offers rest. And as the ride continues, the child's terror grows, until finally, when the father reaches home, the boy lies silent in his arms. This tale has haunted listeners for centuries, not because of violence, but because of quiet inevitability. Der Erlkönig does not seize, he does not chase, he invites. This subtlety is what makes the legend endure. The forest does not strike like thunder, it surrounds, it encloses, it waits. In early belief, Der Erlkönig was thought to collect wandering souls, children lost in the woods, travelers who strayed too far, those weakened by illness or exhaustion. He did not take them by force, He guided them toward rest, toward stillness, toward whatever waited beyond the forest's edge. In this way, he became a personification of death, but not cruel death, not violent death, a gentle passing, a soft invitation. The forests of Europe were once endless. They stretched across valleys, over hills, through entire regions, connecting villages only by narrow paths and whispered stories. To enter them alone was to surrender certainty, and Erlkönig embodied that surrender. As centuries passed, Christianity reshaped much of Europe's spiritual landscape. Old spirits were recast as demons, forest guardians became tempters, and Erlkönig's role darkened. He became a deceiver, a trickster, a whisperer of dangerous promises. Yet beneath this transformation, his original essence remained. He still moved with the rhythm of leaves, still spoke with the hush of wind, still waited patiently beneath moonlit boughs. The Erlkönig does not belong to fear. He belongs to twilight. Now, as your own thoughts begin to slow and the space around you grows quieter, imagine those ancient forests once more, tall trunks rising into darkness, roots threading unseen beneath your feet. Moonlight filtering through drifting mist, the forest breathing, listening, and somewhere within that breath, a presence stirs, not to frighten, but to witness. In the old forests, time does not behave as it does elsewhere. Minutes stretch, hours loosen, and memory folds softly into the present. Paths curve without hurry, streams wander, even the shadows drift with patience. It is here, in these spaces between intention and arrival, that Der Erlkönig is said to reign. Not over territory, not over borders, but over moments. To understand his nature, one must first understand the forest itself. A forest is never still. Even when nothing moves, roots drink quietly, fungi weave unseen bridges, insects pulse beneath bark, water slips through stone, life passes endlessly between forms. The forest is a living conversation, and Der Erlkönig is its listener. In the deepest folklore, he does not command the woods, he belongs to them. His presence is said to rise from the same currents that move sap through trunks, from the same rhythms that guide leaf fall and frost. He does not walk above the forest, he moves within it, like breath through lungs. Those who felt his nearness described a soft alteration of awareness, a narrowing of attention, a heightened sensitivity to sound, a sudden clarity of thought, as though the world had briefly sharpened its focus. This sensation often preceded moments of change, illness turning toward rest, fear dissolving into acceptance, life shifting toward silence. In this way, Der Erlkönig became associated not only with death, but with transformation, the passage from one state of being into another, the liminal threshold. Forests themselves embody this threshold. They exist between field and mountain, between village and wilderness, between safety and uncertainty. Their edges blur, their borders shift, their interiors invite wandering. One may enter at dawn and emerge at dusk, changed in ways difficult to explain. Der Erlkönig is said to not fully visible, not fully hidden, a sovereign of transition. Children were thought especially sensitive to his presence, their imagination still unbounded, their perception still fluid, their minds not yet rigid with certainty. They sensed things adults had learned to dismiss, whispers in wind, movement in shadow, figures in drifting fog, not as threats, but as possibilities. This belief did not arise from fear, it arose from observation. Children, when overtired or feverish or drifting towards sleep, often speak of unseen companions. They describe voices that feel near, hands that do not touch, figures glimpsed at the edge of vision. The old world did not explain these experiences away. It gave them names, and among those names, Der Erlkönig lingered. In this context, the poem of Goethe becomes more than a tragedy. It becomes a meditation on how differently the world is perceived across ages. The father rides urgently, focused on survival, on distance, on speed. The child listens, he senses, he feels the forest watching. Der Erlkönig's voice in the poem is gentle, never commanding, never cruel, only inviting. He offers games, companionship, beauty. He speaks of daughters dancing in moonlight, of warmth, of comfort. His words carry the cadence of sleep. This is why the story unsettles, because the Erlkönig does not behave as a villain, he behaves as rest itself. The forest does not attack the traveler, it embraces, it encloses, it draws inward. The deeper one travels into the forest, the more time seems to lose its hold. Minutes dissolve, distance softens, and movement becomes suggestion. Light filters downward in thin scattered strands, touching leaves, touching bark, touching drifting mist, then vanishing before it can fully arrive. Nothing is sharply defined. Everything exists in gentle transition. Here, the forest does not feel ancient, it feels endless, as though it has always been and will always remain, regardless of who walks beneath its canopy. The ground is layered with centuries of fallen leaves, each season resting upon the last, compressing slowly into dark, fragrant soil. Life grows from what has passed. Roots drink from memory, and memory returns as growth. In this way, the forest becomes a teacher of patience. It does not hurry decay. It does not rush renewal. It allows each stage to unfold fully. The mind, when it enters this rhythm, begins to follow. Thought slows, attention softens, concern loosens its grip, breath becomes deeper, longer, more even. This is the moment when waking awareness begins to recede, not abruptly, but like tide slipping quietly away from shore. The distant world loses its urgency. Sounds grow muted, sensations blur, and the boundaries of the self begin to thin. This is not disappearance, it is expansion. In the forest, no tree stands alone. Each trunk connects below the soil through vast networks of root and fungus, sharing nutrients, sharing warning, sharing support. Life flows outward, not inward. So too does consciousness. When allowed to soften, it no longer clings tightly to individual thought. It widens, it drifts, it becomes spacious. The forest invites this widening. Its vastness absorbs worry, its stillness absorbs tension, its rhythm absorbs restlessness. Here, nothing must be solved, nothing must be decided, nothing must be completed. Only presence remains. In that presence, the story loosens, the legend fades gently into atmosphere. The name de Erlkönig becomes a whisper, then a memory, then only a sense of quiet companionship. The forest no longer speaks, it simply breathes. And in that breathing, sleep finds its path. Over centuries, people learn to sense the moment when forest influence deepened. That time when light fades just enough, when sound begins to soften, when air cools. This was considered the hour of heightened vulnerability, the hour when de Erlkönig wandered most freely, not because danger increased, but because awareness shifted. The mind loosened its grip, dream pressed closer, and imagination stirred. In ancient belief, imagination was not mere fantasy, it was perception untethered, a way of seeing what ordinary senses could not. Children possessed it naturally, artists cultivated it, poets sought it, and storytellers preserved it. Thus, der Erlkönig became the silent patron of poets, a muse of twilight, an inspiration of shadow and breath. His presence lingered wherever words tried to describe what could not be fully named. The alder tree itself reinforces this symbolism. Its wood resists decay, its bark darkens with age, its roots thrive in saturated soil, a tree comfortable in conditions that weaken others. A tree of resilience, a tree of threshold. To sit beneath an alder at dusk is to feel the land listening. Water murmurs, leaves tremble, air shifts, and something older than language seems to stir. This is why alder groves were often avoided after nightfall, not out of fear, but out of reverence. They were believed to belong more fully to the unseen. Der Erlkönig did not rule these groves, he embodied them, their voice given shape, their memory given motion. As the centuries advanced, and forests receded beneath axes and plows, the legend did not fade, it adapted, it moved inward, from the forest into the human mind. The Erlkönig became a symbol of sleep itself, of dreams, of those moments when consciousness wavers, when the body rests but the mind still listens. This is the hour of half-awareness, when thought loses cohesion, when memory drifts, when images rise without cause, when fear dissolves into curiosity, and curiosity dissolves into calm. The forest changes in subtle ways at this hour, not suddenly, not dramatically, but with a gentleness that can only be felt, not seen. The air cools by degrees too small to measure, yet the skin notices, the breath adjusts, the body relaxes. Somewhere, high above the canopy, clouds drift across distant stars, their shadows gliding softly along the upper branches, as though the sky itself were breathing. Insects quieten all at once, but gradually. One voice falls silent, then another, until only the faintest hum remains. A thin thread of sound barely distinguishable from stillness. This thinning of sound is the forest preparing itself for sleep. Owls begin to call, their voices low, hollow, slow, each note traveling far through layered darkness, touching trunk, leaf, stone, before dissolving into distance. Their calls do not startle, they soothe. They announce that the world has entered a deeper rhythm. Mist gathers along the forest floor, pooling between roots, slipping quietly over fallen logs, curling gently around stones softened by centuries of moss. The ground exhales its stored warmth, and the cool night receives it. Everything balances. In the shifting quiet, thought begins to loosen. The mind no longer holds itself tightly. Images blur, edges soften, memory becomes suggestion. What remains is sensation, breath, weight, warmth, presence. This is why forests have always been associated with dreaming. Not because they are strange, but because they are slow. They move at a pace that mirrors the human descent into sleep. Their rhythms match the quieting heart. Their stillness reflects the calming mind. To walk beneath such trees at night is to feel one's awareness stretch outward, not in alertness, but in surrender. The ancient paths that thread through these woods are worn shallow, their edges blurred by leaf fall and rain, their direction known only by instinct and memory. They curve, they wander, they loop gently back upon themselves. No straight lines, no urgency, only gradual progression. These paths once carried hunters, travelers, shepherds, children returning home beneath dimming skies. Each footstep left faint impressions, layered upon centuries of movement. The forest absorbed them all, and in absorbing, remembered. It is along these forgotten routes that the legend of Erlkönig lingers most strongly. Not because he walks there, but because they represent transition between safety and wilderness, between light and dark, between waking and dreaming. At these thresholds, awareness thins, the world softens, and perception widens. This is when people once felt watched, not by malice, but by attention. A quiet presence, a silent witness. The sensation is difficult to describe, not fear, not comfort, but a gentle awareness of something larger moving alongside one's own thoughts. The forest does not intrude, it accompanies. And so, the story of Erlkönig arises naturally, not as invention, but as recognition, a name placed upon that quiet companion here, in this suspended moment. The mind begins to drift fully inward. Thought no longer insists, it floats, it wanders, it fades. The world remains, patient, listening. The Erlkönig inhabits this hour, not as ruler, but as companion, a gentle presence walking beside awareness, until awareness finally releases. Now, as your own thoughts begin to loosen and your breathing softens, this crossing unfolds naturally. There is nothing to pursue, nothing to resist, only the steady drift inward. The forest grows quieter, leaves settle, mist thickens, the night stretches. Erlkönig does not call, he waits, and waiting, in the forest, is a form of peace. As the night deepens, the forest softens, branches loosen their tension, leaves grow still, and the air settles into a steady, unbroken calm. Moonlight slides quietly across bark, touching moss, touching stone, then drifting onward. Nothing rushes, nothing calls, everything waits. The forest at this hour becomes something else entirely. Not a place of movement, not a space of pursuit, but a vast resting breath. Paths fade into shadow, their edges dissolve, footsteps vanish, and direction itself loses meaning. There is no forward, no back, only presence. This is where Erlkönig withdraws most fully. Not retreating, not vanishing, but becoming indistinguishable from the forest itself. He is no longer a figure, no longer a voice, no longer even a thought. He becomes the hush between leaves, the slow rhythm of sap, the quiet steadiness of earth beneath root and stone, and in that becoming, the story releases its hold. In ancient times, People understood that sleep was not an absence, it was a return to the slower pace of the natural world, a surrender of the restless human mind back into the patient rhythm of soil and sky. The forest teaches this return, by standing unmoved through centuries, by holding still while seasons turn, by waiting, always waiting, as you rest now. The forest of the story expands gently around you. Trees stretch beyond sight, their canopies dissolving into soft darkness. Roots weave silently beneath imagined ground, binding stone to soil, soil to water, water to life. Everything connected, everything balanced. The wind moves faintly, not enough to stir leaves, only enough to remind the world that it still breathes. This is the hour when thought loses its edges, when memory drifts apart, when attention softens, when the mind no longer insists upon meaning. The Erlkönig no longer needs form. He no longer needs name. He becomes the quiet understanding that nothing must be done, nothing must be solved, nothing must be carried forward, only rest. The forest does not fear the night, it welcomes it. Darkness nourishes roots, silence restores balance, stillness allows growth, and in that stillness, sleep finds its home. The ancient people who first spoke of the Erlkönig did not tell his story to frighten, they told it to soften the unknown, to give shape to the invisible, to turn fear into familiarity. In naming the presence of the forest, they made peace with it. In shaping death as a king, they made it gentle. In giving shadow a voice, they allowed it to speak quietly. This is the gift of folklore, not terror, but understanding. Now, as the world around you grows faint, and awareness drifts inward, the forest loosens its form, branches blur, leaves fade, mist thickens, until only the sensation of calm remains. Nothing approaches, nothing withdraws, everything simply rests. If once, long ago, a phantom king walked these woods, his footsteps have long since blended into the earth. Only peace remains, breath slows, heartbeat softens, thought dissolves. There is no forest now, no story, no shadow, only quiet. This has been Fairy Tales After Dark.